You to Gabby Campanario. She's the Seattle sketcher from the Seattle Times. You've been in town since 2006,
Yeah,
right?
7 years.
7 years. He is also the founder of the Worldwide Urban Sketchers and current chairman of the board, right?
Sure. Sounds
He's from
very
Barcelona
official. Yeah.
and has lived in the States since '98. It's great that you can be here today, and we're excited to hear what you have to say. I'm personally very excited.
Very good.
Thanks.
Well, thank you, David. I am very excited to be here. I'm always excited about being among architects. Perhaps it's because when I went to journalism school in college, the journalism school didn't have a building, but the architecture school did. So, and it was a very nice one in Pamplona. I don't know if you've been to Pamplona, where the running of the bulls happens every July. So some of my journalism classes were in the architecture building, and maybe that rubbed off on me a little bit because I always like to draw. And I still have a vivid memory of going into my classes and going by these wall of drawings that all the first-year architecture students would put up for people in the school to see. I'm a lot of years to realize, hey, you know, I can draw from life and draw my city just for fun. You know, I don't have to be an architect to do this. You know, there's so much you get out of drawing on the streets. You know. In recording your experiences. So anyway, I went on a journalism career working mostly in newspaper art departments, doing information graphics, illustration, design. I was an editor for a while, managing design and photo departments until 2006. At the time I was living in Washington, D.C. metro area. I was working for USA Today. And as I was doing more and more management in newsrooms, I was missing out more the creative aspects of my job. I was missing out doing the work, the hands-on work. And I had an opportunity to come work for the Seattle Times as a staff artist to the newsroom. And my wife and I just decided to move to Seattle. We had met previously in California on the West Coast, and we really like the Pacific time zone. You know, you can watch the world go by from here. You know, when everybody's already going to bed, we still have a few more hours in the day to enjoy, right? So anyway, I came to Seattle, and I was really at the time thinking, well, I'm going to get back into my daily habit of sketching. This is a lot of fun. My job was going to be also going to involve more drawing and illustration, so I thought it would only make my work better to sketch on a daily basis. I think you experience that as an architect. The more you draw, the more your brain is in tune with your visual side, and when you have to communicate concepts to others, you know, it's always much easier. So I started drawing on my own time, and then after a couple of years, I started a blog on my own personal time, and people started reading the blog. It was called Seattle Sketcher, right? And one of the weeklies, I think it was the Stranger Art Critic, did a blog post about me, and I was starting to get more traffic on my blog. So one day I just went to my editors at the Seattle Times and said, hey, I'm doing this. I think this would be a good feature for the newspaper that I could probably do as part of my job or in addition to my job. And they liked the idea, and that's how my column every Saturday in the paper started in 2009. So I'm going to show you a little bit of that work. And of course, every person I meet tells me, wow, your job must be so exciting. You're so much fun. You're always out there drawing. That's not necessarily true. I don't sketch like every single day of the week. I have to do other things as well in the newsroom. But I do sketch at least once a week for the Saturday column. And certainly in the summer when it's nice, it's beautiful to be outside drawing. But sometimes, you know, when it's the winter, you know, it can be a little bit of a drag, right? But anyway, you can find me in Seattle, you know, hunching over my sketchbook, wearing my fingerless gloves in the winter time, which is a really good way to keep your hands warm. And yeah.
One of the things we were talking about is if you guys have questions along the way, don't wait till the end. Ask them as we're going.
Sure, yeah, just please feel free to interrupt me. So anyway, so this was in White Center, the neighborhood of White Center. I went there to their business district, you know. And there was a new ice cream shop that opened a few years ago, and then this other lady opened this Cafe Rosella, and has really revitalized the community. And so I was meeting people and doing some sketches over there. So as I was telling you, I get to go to interesting places and discover things that you wouldn't even know they were there. And that's the thing about drawing, you know. In a way, you don't become aware of things until you start drawing them. Because when you're drawing them, you really have to pay attention, okay? You have to measure things, you have to look at the colors, you have to look at the details. And there's so much richness into the overall landscape we are surrounded by that you miss when you don't have that kind of mindset of wanting to sketch it. Here at the Silsol Marina, I discovered they have this really cool, they call it Chile the Silsol monster. On the by the marina, I had to walk on one of the docks to get as close as I could to do that sketch. And sometimes I like to, take a photo also, and I may share it later on Facebook or on Twitter. This is another example of being outside drawing on a dreary day, right? But anyway, again, it's all about, for me, sketching is not about producing these perfect illustrations. It's about recording an experience. So they can be quick, fast, and it's a way for me to remember that in a much better way. If you're interested about my tools, I just have some watercolors, and I use water brushes and a little water container to refill and be able to add the watercolors on the spot. But the sketching can be dangerous too, Like I went to sketch these horses and I got attacked by a goat. So these are some of the downsides of my job. And this was very fortuitous because I just gave my iPhone to the guy who owns this land in Briar to say, hey, maybe you can take a photo of me while I'm sketching. And then the goat must have heard because she just jumped all over me. Anyway, this is the sketch I was doing. For me, sketching is a way to learning about the community. I grew up in Barcelona, lived there until I was 18, went to college then in Pamplona, right? When I was growing up, and as a teenager, we've all been teenagers, you kind of rebel a bit against the world, and you think the grass is greener somewhere else. So I had that adventurous spirit and went to college to a different city, and then later came to the United States for a couple of years, and then moved here in '98 to work for a newspaper. And I realized that for a lot of that time, when I was in the sketching, I was missing out so much. When I go to Barcelona now, I go like, oh my gosh, these buildings are amazing. Of course I knew Gaudí, and you've been there, it's beautiful. But I was like, sort of big deal, Gaudí, I live here, It's like somebody maybe from Seattle that goes, oh yeah, the Puget Sound, the mountains, big deal, we see them every day. But if you really start thinking as a sketcher and start to draw your environment, then you really learn so much more and appreciate it. And that's the communication aspect that I try to carry on with my column. It's not about just drawing different places, it's about telling a story of the places I am. Here, I went to this community in Briar because somebody told me that they still drive horses there, and it's just 15 minutes north of Seattle. And it's interesting because their horse culture is evident just when you go visit City Hall. In front of City Hall, there's a 200-feet long horse arena where people go with their horses. And again, I was saying the sketching is dangerous too because I went when I was doing these sketches, I had to kayak for like an hour and a half to get to the Kalakala ferry in Tacoma, and then on the way back, my kayak flipped over, so I ended up, taking a dip on the Puget Sound. And I had warned the guy who took me there, look, I've never kayaked in my life, you're going to have to teach me a crash course. And he did, so that probably saved my life. And also the wetsuit that he lent me. So that was an interesting experience. By the time we got there, my feet were just so hurting that I was like exhausted. I was like, how am I going to draw this? But I did get some good sketches, and the owner of the Kalakala at the time, because then he lost the boat, he was living on a trailer next to the ferry. He had spent all his money to try to save this historic boat, and it never did happen. And here are other examples where you can see the type of drawings that I'm doing on the street. Here, I thought about writing about the South Lake Union streetcar. It's in my neighborhood where I work at the Seattle Times. And when it started, everybody was like, why do we need this streetcar? There's nobody, you don't see that many pedestrians in South Lake Union, right? But then Amazon moved a couple of years later, and now it's like a whole new city down there. It's pretty amazing how that part of the city has transformed. Here's another example of my work sketching at the University of Washington at the Red Square. So you see this is a fountain pen. Mostly I use this type of fountain pen. Sometimes also if I don't have time to add the watercolor, I may add it later in the newsroom. And that's, I think, what I did with this sketch. This is another example where is the opposite. You know, I did finish the sketch all on location, and I'm mostly using even the same paper where I'm drawing the sketch to as my color palette. So I guess because I know this is a drawing meant to be on a blog and meant to be in the newspaper, that I'm not preparing it in a way that it would be framed in a gallery. You know, that's not the end result that I'm pursuing. The end result that I'm pursuing is telling a story. You know, in this case, the story of one of the few remaining examples of the old mansions that used to be on First Hill and on Capitol Hill at the turn of the century.
So, this looks like a very complicated sketch. So, for someone looking at it, they might say, "Wow, I don't know how to start that." So, how would you go about constructing that?
Well, I think that's a very good question. It does look like a complicated sketch, but I think when you are sketching architecture, perhaps my approach is less orthodox, in the sense that I am not drawing construction lines to get the perspective right. I am just basically measuring angles in my head to get the right proportions, and really emphasizing some big lines, like these, the shapes of the roof, and the strong perspective. So I think the good thing about sketching is that you have more freedom to experiment and be loose with your drawings than you would have if you were having to draw to create that building, right? You guys draw blueprints for your work, and you can't. The thing about architecture is like being a doctor in a way. You can't make mistakes. If you make a mistake, the building or the bridge, they're going to fall down, or people are not going to enter through the door if you don't measure the door right. A doctor was telling me once, why I love now? Because it gives you the opportunity to be creative without much constraints.
What's the average time you spend on sketching?
I think that was probably 45 minutes. I especially, I remember that day was really cold. I was with my fingers closed. I just wanted to get out of there, even though it was a little sunny. But I try not to spend a lot of time with my drawings. Lately, I've done a few more that are more elaborated, and perhaps I've spent an hour and a half. But I am more of a quick sketcher, just get the impression, and I like my lines to be economical, and how much can you show and with the fewer amount of lines. That's an interesting challenge to give yourself. How much do you need to draw for somebody else to come and recognize, oh, I've been there, I know where that is. Sometimes you don't even need color. Like I do color because the sketches are published in color, but I love just drawing in black and white. I think there's a lot of value to just line drawing. So yeah, feel free to ask me more questions. Thanks, David. And thank you.
Do you kind of sketch up or sketching it out in pencil first to get the overall shape, or do you commit right to pen?
This one was right to pen. I like to do as many as I can, just right to pen. I think if the perspective is a little too complex, I may rough out with pencil, just block big areas. But if you go with pencil and then go with pen, it's like doing the work twice, you know. So why do that, you know? I mean, do you even erase the pencil anyway? Somebody's laughing.
Because that's what I do.
Well, there's nothing wrong about doing pencil. Again, you know, everybody has their own methods. But I also like that when you're doing a straight to pen, it's almost like seeing through your mind, what your mind was thinking when you were building the sketch. Because you see the mistakes, you see all the lines, you know. And if you didn't put a line in the right spot, you know, well, forget it's there. Just add to it, you know. I think the sketch can become rich. But again, I do sometimes do pencil, you know, like I see you guys have the one of the bus station downtown there. That perspective is one that I just at least mark in pencil, you know, just to get the proportions right. Something else that I do is I would draw little thumbnails of the composition. So on the previous page here, I may have done just a small 1 inch by 1 inch thumbnails of the composition, because getting the composition right is very important. You know, if you go with the wrong angle, then you start drawing, then you regret it. Like, why did I stand here? I should have stood like 5 or 4 feet away. It was a very interesting angle. I do certainly tend to like straight, sharp angles with buildings. They always make for, I think, more interesting drawings. And this is the way the column appears in the paper. This is from a few years ago. But again, this is another straight to ink sketch, you know, where perhaps because of the nature of my job, I guess I'm just put in the situation that is like, I don't have the time to mess it up. I have to just like hope for the best, right? And sometimes, and in this case it happened, before I did this one, I had at least what I call two false starts, where the guy is standing there in front of me because I had talked to this sailor, and you know, and he knows I'm sketching him, and I've started with his face, and I don't like it, so I flip the page and start over. So I think that's happened in this sketch. For this sketch, I think I messed up basically 2 blank pages where it wasn't going where I wanted. But I prefer to just turn the page and start anew than having started in pencil and rework the pencil, because if you do that, then you also run the risk of overworking your drawing. And if there's a quality that a sketch should have, in my opinion, is that it should feel fresh and spontaneous. It shouldn't feel overworked, right? So, and when I'm drawing people in my compositions, I always start with the expression of the person or the people, if they are the subject. I think any scene I draw, I decide first what's the most important element here, and then I start there. Because that's, you know, it doesn't matter if I don't get this part of the ship okay, you know, because this is the focus of the drawing. But if this is weak, I can draw this shape as good as you want, you know, then the sketch is not going to gel for me. I don't know if I'm explaining that right.
Interesting idea about that. You have a person in the sketch, and you're starting with the the individual as the story. I think we tend to go opposite. We tend to think that the story is the building, and the people that we put in it are scale figures, just to give us the right judgment.
Right, and the story may as well be the building in other cases, so that's completely fine. Like in that example of the bus station, again, the bus station is the subject, but then you do want to also put those people around to give a sense of a scale and to make the scene more lively. So
how have you gotten so good at drawing people?
Well, I think when I moved here, I did a lot of drawing on the bus during my commute, and I still do. Like every day, when I get on the bus, I have a pocket sketchbook, and you draw. They are, you know, the cheapest model you can get. You know, and just draw somebody on the bus. But I still don't think I draw people like that well. I mean, there's a lot to learn, in drawing people, and I'm now working on a book about that. I think getting a sense of the proportions of the person is important, but also it's important not to think that you're drawing people when you're drawing people, because your brain will mess with you. You will be thinking, oh yeah, heads are round. No, heads are not round. Or people have two legs. No, when they are walking on the street, you don't see two legs walking like that. You see a shape that is it can be anything, right? So if you forget you're drawing people, your people will turn out much, much better. Look at the profiles. When you sketch somebody in profiles are always easier to sketch, right? A cartoon, we have the mental concept of a cartoon face that is, just like a novel with a big nose, right? But look at the shape of the faces. It's fascinating to just look at the profiles of every person. There's a lot of indentations and protrusions coming out of every single profile, So when you think in terms of shapes, not of arms, legs, noses, that's kind of a good thing to do. Did that cover that? Okay, so here again more, this is how my work appears in the paper. This is that story about the horses in Briar, and I usually draw more, and then on the paper, 1 or 2 drawings may run in the paper, the rest run on my blog at seattletimes.com. Sometimes I try to do every now and then a bigger story, like in this case I went to South Park when they closed the South Park Bridge and basically, isolated the neighborhood quite a bit, and that had a lot of impact in the community. So this is where I get to merge my background as a journalist and my art, And this is to me what makes the whole sketching really worthwhile, because I get to communicate a story. Sometimes we think about art as this big thing you have to put on a wall, and we forget that art can communicate, And I think drawings in the newspaper also have a way to capturing people's attentions and connecting with them in a different way than other visual elements. And every year also at the end of the year, they give me a little more space also to do a little bit of a look back at the year. And this was what I wrote about in this day, was about the people behind the places. Every place in a city, there's a story behind it from the people who are walking by or using that space. And this is one of the examples, the Blaine Stairway on Capitol Hill. Have you been there? Are you familiar with this on Capitol Hill? So you see this, and they mean things differently for different people. For the guy I interview, is where he trained for marathons, running them up and down. And when he started running the marathons, he decided to start a website cataloging every stairway in Seattle with more than 100 steps. So he just got so into it. So that's something I would have never known, if I hadn't been pursuing that story. Or in Madison Park, I saw these guys with these metal detectors underwater, and I thought, wow, are you going to get electrocuted with that thing? And I didn't know those metal detectors were underwater. And then they told me, no, this is their hobby. That's what they do. And they were there in Madison Park because that's where there was a ferry terminal back until the 50s that connected Madison Park with Kirkland. There was a ferry that ran. So see, by sketching, I'm learning all these cool things about the city and then being able to communicate them. So I think that's what makes it all very worthwhile. On Facebook, I have a page that I wanted to show you, so you can go like it, of course. I put a little more of behind the scenes takes on my sketching, like I wrote the ducks last week, and this was a drawing, my drawing in progress inside one of those Ride the Ducks, with the guy wearing that hat. This I put yesterday. I didn't do anything Veterans Day related this year, but the year before I did some portraits of veterans, so I linked back to that. And on Twitter, I sometimes also put more things that are even unrelated to sketching, like if I do illustrations for the newspaper, So I did that a little fun spot illustration about Halloween, and so that's one thing that I tweeted recently. So that's about my work at the paper, and this part of my presentation is about what I'm doing there and how that, in my mind, years ago, became the seed of the urban sketchers community. And after starting that community, it also led to this book, The Art of Urban Sketching, which, of course, I recommend it to you, not because I...
We have it in the library.
You have it in the library, there you go. Not because I did it, but because of the amount of fabulous work that I was able to collect from artists around the world. I mean, it's just like an amazing range. There's more than 100 artists featured from cities, from Seattle to Sydney, crossing the world. And when I started Urban Sketchers, I thought, like, what attracted me to it is that this was 2008, was just 5 years ago, right? But I was going online and finding many artists, many people who, like me, some artists, some just basically drawing enthusiasts, that were sharing drawings of their cities. And I was just fascinated because that's what I like to do. And then I was just learning to see their cities from their own very unique perspectives, So after seeing the work of most of them on Flickr, the image sharing website, I emailed a bunch of them and said, why don't we start a blog where we all can share our work? And that's how Urban Sketches started, as a group blog. I emailed like 15 or 20 of them, and I asked them to send me a photograph of them sketching in their city and a little paragraph about themselves. So that's how the website launched in November 1st, 2008. And then every month I kept adding people. And then on Flickr, the Urban Sketches Flickr, I also invited people to share their drawings there. The good thing about Flickr is that anybody could share their drawings. So it wasn't limited to these artists that I was basically handpicking for the main blog, right? But the artists on the main blog, my goal was to create something that was very diverse, that would have good quality sketches that would inspire others to sketch. So these are some of my early sketches in Seattle. That's 2007. So you see, when I moved here, I had, and I still do this, my pocket sketchbook with me all the time. So I was on the bus and I was sketching, subreptitiously, like I wouldn't let people see I was sketching them, having my backpack in front of me. And I still do it on the bus. I still do it that way. I did have an occasion where somebody really got mad at me and started yelling at me, why are you drawing me? And I just got a little shook out from that experience. And I said, well, I'm just drawing, man, just chill, And well, you need to give me your sketchbook now. You don't have a right to draw me. And I go, well, this is a public bus, And luckily my stop was coming and I just got off the bus. But so after that, it took me a few days, where I was like, well, should I sketch or not? What should I do? My advice now, and after having gone through that experience and other cases where people recognize you're drawing them, like at the coffee shop, is like, it's better to just like show what you're doing, don't try to hide it, because if you just say, oh yeah, I'm just passing time and sketching you, most chances are that the people won't be crazy. They would just be, oh, let me see, and they will want you to email them their drawing, things like that. Right. No. And well, this is another debate we've had among urban sketchers, especially from other countries, where they say, no, you can't draw you can't draw the Chrysler building, it's copyrighted. And it's like, well, of course you can draw the Chrysler building, it's part of your freedom of speech, But no, it's like Mickey Mouse. If you start drawing Mickey Mouse and putting it on T-shirts, then you can get in trouble, So anyway, my advice about all those ethical dilemmas is that as long as you are on the public space, you can draw at your heart's content. I mean, our news photographers in newspaper and the news media wouldn't be able to do their jobs if they couldn't do that. Now, if I am inside a private business and I'm drawing without their permission, then well, sir, you can balance that. Will you ask them for permission or will you let them know? That's certainly, when you're inside a private business, that's something to consider. But again, the majority of people who find you sketching on the street, they are very complimentary. I have never had or heard of anybody of any skill level being told like, oh, that doesn't look like the building, or they're usually very amazed. Wow, you can do that. I mean, think about it. I don't know if anybody has done the statistics, but people that out of 100 people, how many of them really draw on a regular basis and have developed that skill? Not that many. Doesn't mean that they couldn't develop it, but just people, back when they're in high school, and people start saying, "Oh, that doesn't look like that." That's something that takes people back, and unfortunately, stops them from drawing, and stops them from developing a skill that is really important. That allows you to communicate with people.
I think about all kids in school draw.
Exactly.
Draw.
Yeah. Exactly.
And then at some point, people stop doing it for whatever reason.
Exactly, and drawing is intuitive. I mean, it's just a basic instinct that, to record what we see. So anyway, here I in trying to define sketching, urban sketching, I said that it gives you a lot of bang for your buck. With nothing more than a piece of paper and a pencil, you're equipped to start drawing your city or village, the people who live there, and things that are happening in it. I mean, you can't really think of any more affordable hobby than sketching. This is the book. You're familiar with it. You would be familiar with the table of contents. I really wanted to show a map of the world, and with a line going from city to city to show that this is something we have in common as humans. This type of communication. So I think that's something very unique when language and words divide us, become an obstacle, because if you don't speak French, how are you going to talk to a Frenchman? Or if you don't speak Spanish, how are you going to talk to somebody who speaks Spanish? But when you can draw, there's a connection that happens, with people. And when I started Urban Sketchers, I thought for the website it would be cool to show what we did in a very simple way, and what better way than showing the sketchers and the artwork they were creating on a photograph. So these are the blog banners with people from Jakarta. He's a graphic designer there, Dar Sedar. And the thing about Urban Sketches that led me later to start a nonprofit to promote drawing on location was that I was really fascinated by the connections people were making all over the world. Like I had this, when in the world would I have had somebody from Jakarta email me and tell me, hey Gabi, thanks so much for starting Urban Sketchers. It's been 20 years since Dar and I went to college together and I didn't know where he was. And then I found him on your website, so we've reconnected again. So I hear stories like that now all the time. So there's a good cause behind drawing our communities that happens. It's just when you get to know about other cultures, you find something in common with people. There's Marina, she's in Israel, Shiho in Los Angeles. And you see, everybody's also drawn to different subjects, It doesn't have to be the beautiful postcard scene that you're drawing. So this is a little bit of the history of the community. Urban Sketches, just with that name, is the group I started on Flickr in 2007. I was just, on a Sunday at home, kind of playing around. I had opened an account on Flickr a few months before, and then I saw this option to start a group, and then I clicked there, and then before I knew it, I had started a group, and I thought, well, how should I call this? And I thought, well, they are sketches and they're urban because I live in a city, and so I'll call them Urban Sketches. So that's how I can't believe nobody had really thought of those two words together. I mean, I haven't really found reference to the art of sketching. I mean, in that, with those two words anywhere else. I mean, field drawing is basically one of the classic terms to define what we do, but not Urban Sketching. So that was kind of a serendipity to find that cool name. And this is how the blog looked originally in 2008. And then in 2009 is when I emailed the 100 people I had already recruited for the blog, and I told them, what are we going to do with this? This is a lot of work for me. should we do something else? Should we try to make decisions together? And we kind of had a little email thread brainstorming if we should become some sort of illustration agency or just keep doing what we were doing. And the idea of a nonprofit sounded cool because we would be able to promote this art form, and by being registered as a nonprofit, that would give us the ability to do workshops and activities. And so it's been 4 years since the nonprofit, and we've organized 4 international meetups. The first one was in Portland in 2010. Next one was in Lisbon. The next one in Santo Domingo, and we just had the last one in Barcelona. And in 2014, it's going to be in Brazil. So, start thinking about your vacation, and come join me there. We're going to Parachi, which is a Portuguese colonial city that has, with our beautiful architecture preserved from the 1800s. It's like a pirate village by the sea. And one of the urban sketches there, an architect based in Sao Paulo, is behind the organization. So it's going to be really amazing. So in these symposiums during the summer, they've been phenomenal. I mean, in Barcelona, there were people from 30 different countries sketching together. So we hope to be able to do more of that. It's a volunteer effort, so nobody gets paid, but hopefully we'll keep working on it. And this is also a year or so into creating the group. I was thinking to myself, well, what defines what we do, right? Because people were sometimes posting I was just thinking to myself, if you're drawing a person on a figure drawing class, is that urban sketching? And I thought, I don't think that is urban sketching, right? So I wrote this manifesto and also put it on the website to get feedback from the community. And this is what I wrote. The first tenet is we draw on location, indoors or out. I did put indoors or out because also the first reaction I had from people is like, I live in Moscow, it's too cold out here, I can't draw. And I go, well, go inside the building, it's okay, as long as you're drawing your environment in your city, that's cool. The next one, our drawings tell the story of our surroundings. It's true. You go out there, and as you can see from my column, there's a story behind every place. And these are examples of a building, of a beautiful Art Deco bridge being demolished. The daughter of the bar owner, who the owner came and told the sketcher, "Hey, my daughter's here. You should sketch her." Our drawings are a record of time and place. Now the main visual form of documentation is photography. When you take a photograph, that shows what happened there at that moment. Sketching can do the same thing. In fact, before photography became the predominant visual form in newspapers, back in the 1850s, newspapers employed artists, the illustrated newspapers of the time, that were sent to the battlefields to do sketches, and those sketches were later converted into engravings for the illustrated newspapers. Winslow Homer was a special artist drawing scenes on the U.S. Civil War. So drawings were telling those stories, recording that moment. And this is an example from Kumi, an advertising designer in Tokyo, going to record how this big skyscraper construction progressed over time. I think that's a really beautiful way to record the progress. So next time you design a building, tell your boss to send you to sketch it, as it's coming together. Number 4, truthful to the scenes we witnessed. This is a point that when I put it on the website was a little bit controversial because somebody said, well, I exaggerate things, because I had also written, we don't caricaturize or exaggerate things. I guess my journalistic bias of being objective, just got in the way, but some other sketches were saying, well, as long as your intent is of capturing what you see and you're not making things up, that's okay. Because somebody else said, oh, well, I'm drawing in Brooklyn, if there's a water tower on top of the building, I just add a few more because it looks better. So I said, well, maybe not add things that are not there. But anyway, as long as the impression captured by the sketcher is genuine, then that's what counts. It doesn't matter if the buildings are tilted, or perspectives are a little exaggerated. I think this is an artist, Benedetta, an illustrator in Rome, that had a very beautiful style where she will distort things, and I think it's just as valid. It's a personal interpretation, right? Also, while most of the sketchers use pen and ink and watercolor, it doesn't matter what you use. If you want to draw with coffee, go ahead. If you want to draw with wine, it's good too. Any tools are good. Over there, you have a very big, I think I used that one in the book, sketching kit from Paul Histon, an artist I like very much. And then, as to build community, I thought also that we should support each other and draw together. And I think that's created a really good spirit of camaraderie among sketchers, and a spirit that is not competitive, because we're doing this for fun, not to, while it has many applications in the workplace, because the more you sketch, the better you can apply those visual skills. That's not really what Urban Sketchers is about. It's not competitive. And then we share our drawings online. If it wasn't because of the web, we wouldn't have met each other. And in the first place, Gerard Michel, an architect in Belgium, he had drawn for 35 years, had a bunch of sketchbooks piled in his drawers, and he discovered Flickr just a few weeks before I emailed him. And I said, Gerard, and he barely speaks English, but we were able to kind of exchange some emails, and said, I'd like for you to join the website. And since then, he's been really a great participant in all the events in the community. This is a photo of everyone sketching together on a sketch scroll in Barcelona years ago. A sketch scroll is another sketching movement that started out of a website called sketchscroll.com, which was the idea of an artist who works for Pixar in San Francisco, of meeting, once every 3 months. There's a sketch scroll day for people to meet. And these are some images from the book that I have here, but we're running out of time, and I want you to perhaps ask me more questions, but you'll see in the book the stories behind these sketches. These are the paparazzi in LA. So Stefan just saw them one day and started sketching them. This is from Korea, an impromptu barber shop on the street. This is a bookstore. And you can see the different styles. A bookstore in Malaga, Spain, that it was the bookstore that the artist who drew this had known since he was a kid, and it closed. It ended up closing because they redeveloped that building. So before they closed it, he makes sure he would sketch it, to keep that memory for himself. This is Ashley in Bangkok. He drew all the lines, not the colors, but all the lines while he was driving. I don't recommend that, though. Don't do that. But he had the excuse that this was like a massive traffic jam where the car was basically. Where the cars were barely moving an inch, so he occupied himself drawing, and you can see how free that sketch is, right? In terms of sketching the urban space. What do you think about this? Is this crazy? Many urban sketchers make the habit of sketching their food. I don't do it because I like to eat it. It gets cold otherwise. But this one was an interesting one with snails. This is James Hobb, an urban sketcher in London who has a very unique style. This is what I like to call urban furniture. I don't know if you call it that in architecture, but on the streets, there's a lot of urban furniture. The news rugs, the fire hydrants, the lampposts, and they are as fun to draw as the entire scene, right? And they kind of give you a little focus on something unique to draw. Even the telephone poles, can be interesting to look at all those wires. This is obviously a majestic sketch in Venice on Piazza di San Marco. These are all in the book. And another sketch in Italy where Fred Lynch tells the story of being of sketching this building, and while he's sketching, a guy wrapped around just with a towel comes to the window on the balcony and looks, and he's singing like opera, right? And then he notices Fred sketching down there, and Fred looks up and also notices him singing, and then the guy stopped singing, and Fred carried on drawing, and later on they run into each other on the streets a few times, and they just nodded at each other, and Fred writes something very thought-provoking that said that we both share that insecurity of having shared our art or something like that, because he was singing, the other guy was sketching. Again, a view from inside, right? When you can't go sketch outside because of the bad weather, you can certainly go and sketch through the window. And I've seen you have pretty amazing views from your workplace here of the city. And then also sketching isn't really about drawing beautiful places. Chain link fence can be a subject for sketching, especially if you run into a sign that says "Have a nice day," right? That's a good juxtaposition. This is the Urban Sketchers. Since the beginning of Urban Sketchers, then groups all over the world have also developed and started their own websites and ways to get together and share their artwork. So we have our own here in Seattle that you can follow, and David is part of it. That's how we met. We meet once a month to go out and sketch, and it's all. Yeah, this Sunday at the Botanical Gardens, right? So it's good. As much as I like to kind of make drawing part of my day, it's also nice when you have like a structured day where you just go and draw. And if you're doing it with like-minded people who like to draw, it's really motivating. And on Flickr, we have an Urban Sketchers group and also a Seattle Urban Sketchers Flickr group where you can share your artwork. And I think that's it. So, sorry, I said you should interrupt me while I was talking, but I didn't really let you do that much. So, feel free. How many of you here have a sketchbook in your bag right now? Or, at your desk? And how many of you sketch like as a daily, daily? Once a week? Okay. So what does, you probably, being architects, you probably are like, oh my gosh, like, I've had enough of work, I don't want to have to be drawing again, right? Does that messes up with your interest in drawing?
Not usually, because usually we're working on the computer, so actually getting with a pen is a break. Mm-hmm. And the last one we had last weekend, or last Tuesday, someone made a comment that they liked doing it because it got them away, mentally away from the office for just an hour. Right. Even though we were still here in the office.
Mm-hmm. Right. I think I've also heard other people say the payoff of sketching is very immediate, right? When you are working on designing the cool buildings you guys design, you start a project, and how long does it take to design a building?
Sometimes years.
Whereas a sketch, you in 15 minutes you have something there. That's it. It's the end. You don't have to redraw it. You don't even have to scan it in if you don't want to, and put it online. I mean, I think it's a big payoff to get that you get out of the practice.
Do you find yourself drawn to a particular place or a particular look when you're out there? Is there something that just calls to you? Do you like buildings or sea, or is there something that you come to know about yourself more through sketching?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I'm certainly interested in the scenes where something is happening, and the places that have some history attached to them. For example, for this coming Saturday, I went to sketch on the beach, on Alki Beach, where the Denny party arrived in 1853 on a week like this one, So I thought that's interesting. In 160 years ago, there was, nothing of the Seattle we know today existed back then. But the place where it all started does exist, and you can go stand there and sketch it, right? So I think that's what appeals to me about sketching. Learning something about a place. I think sketching adds to a sense of belonging to a place. And for me, that has even more personal meaning because I didn't grow up here. I grew up thousands of miles away. And life just works that way. Now I'm here, I have kids, this is my home, right? So I've made a deliberate decision of, okay, I'm from Seattle now. I'm gonna understand football no matter what. I'm gonna root for the Seahawks. I don't know why they have to wear helmets and all those things, but it's a way of immersing myself in this culture. And I think it's working because now I go to Barcelona and it's like I'm a tourist there, I don't recognize things as much as I did before. So.
Do you ever ask your sketchers to, instead of finding unique things, to all choose something similar or the same thing even maybe, as an exercise for interpretation of the same as opposed to, I know you spend a lot of time on the various places around the world that people can see and share, but I don't know, it may be a different discussion to all be drawing the same thing.
Right.
Maybe either from a photograph or, I don't know.
Yeah, well, that's a good question. We do have something that we do on Flickr. If you go to the Flickr group, every week somebody there posts what is called a sketching theme. So I think this week was signage, So other weeks has been waterscapes, bridges, and if you go through the discussion threads, you'll find them, And it's very interesting because then people do what you just said. They can concentrate on one topic, and then when they share the drawing, you can see the different approaches, and it's very interesting, to see drawings of bridges coming from people all over the world, or farmers markets, or many other elements that are common to the built environment. So we don't do like drawing from photo because that's like a big no-no, I guess, in drawing a location. There's nothing wrong about drawing from photographs. It's a great exercise, but that's one thing where kind of we draw the line, and because we are very much. That's our tenet number one. We are about drawing on location. It's okay if you go back home and add some colors, that's fine because you were there, you saw it. So that's what counts. That's a good question. Maybe we should do more of that. We don't do that among the Seattle group. It's more like the overall big Flickr group. Do you guys put your artwork or of any kind online, on blogs or?
Yeah, we've been blogging our.
Oh, your sketches from your group. But is that blog internal?
No, it's external.
Oh, it is? Oh, well then I should look it up. Maybe is the same one where you put the ones when you did the Seattle Times building?
Yeah.
Okay. I should bookmark it. What else? Any more ideas?
Very inspiring. Thank you.
Oh, wow. Yeah. It's great to talk to you guys.